meet my fellow bookish witches. I am Witchy Reads, and today I want us to grab a warm cup of something, our coziest hoodie. Let's talk about my cozy Yule TBR picks. I am a mood reader, and right now my mood is cozy. Since Yule is upon us, I figured it would be fun to pick 12 cozy books to celebrate the 12 days of Yule. I have pulled those 12 cozy books across my audiobooks, my Kindle books, and as well as pulling some off of my physical shelf behind me. All of the books I have selected fall under the umbrella of cozy fiction. At least that is what I feel based off of reading the synopsis for each of them. There is a 13th book in my pile that is my book club selection for the month of November. I did get really lucky that my book club pick kind of falls under that cozy umbrella, so to speak. All that being said, let's get into the books. First, we will talk about the two books I have selected to listen to as audiobooks. The first is The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. This is her biography written by her, starting with her childhood, going all the way through to the end of her hellish ordeal with the conservatorship that was controlled by her father. I'm not usually a big autobiography reader, but when I do find one that I want to read, I usually do listen to them through audiobook. I find it much easier to take in autobiographies in the audio format. This has a lot to do with the fact that the author is also the one reading the story. Though for this one, I have looked into it, and it appears that Britney Spears voiced an introduction to the audiobook, and then the rest of the book is read by Michelle Williams. I completely understand why that is. A lot of what Britney Spears went through was very traumatic, and I would imagine that writing the story was already hard enough, and I can't imagine you would have the energy to re-traumatize yourself simply to reread what you wrote. I totally understand why she isn't the one reading it. Michelle Williams is an excellent choice. She's an amazing actress, so I feel like she's going to give the right amount of emotion that this book definitely deserves. The second audiobook that I will be reading is What Wild Women Do by Karma Brown. This book deals with intersecting timelines and follows two different women. One in present day, following a young woman who is struggling to get a hold of what she wants to do with her life. She is a struggling screenwriter, and she's on vacation with her boyfriend in the hopes of kind of igniting that creative spark. The other timeline is in the 1970s, following a female socialite turned feminist crusader who vanishes without a trace. I am always down to read about wild women. Next, I have picked two ebooks to read. I will be reading those through my Kindle account. The first is Weyward by Emilia Hart. This book is a 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards nominee for Best Historical Fiction and Best Debut Novel. This story also follows multiple women on different timelines. I believe they also intersect throughout the book. The first timeline takes place in 2019. There is a woman fleeing an abusive relationship, and she goes in to seek refuge in a cottage in the woods that she inherited from her great aunts. The next timeline is in 1619, where we follow a woman who is being tried for murder, also is suspected of witchcraft. The synopsis does imply that she does have some magical qualities that are rooted in nature that she learned from her mother. She has to tap into those in order to keep her freedom. The last storyline takes place in 1942, where we follow a woman who is trapped by societal norms. She is grieving the loss of her mother, and more so grieving what she has left in her wake the mysteries, the fact that she really doesn't seem to know who her mother was. According to the synopsis, all three storylines weave and mix together and claims that this is an enthralling novel about female resilience. The second ebook I will be reading is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. This is the first book in the Winter Night trilogy. All three books are out now. If I enjoy this book, it looks like I will have to finish the trilogy. This was a 2017 Goodreads Choice Awards nominee for Best Fantasy, and Arden was also nominated for Best Debut Author that same year. The story takes place during a Russian winter. We follow a young woman who grew up listening to the folk tales of the forest surrounding her home, particularly the tales of Frost, the blue-eyed winter demon. In the story, her mother has passed away. Her father remarries. There seems to be an evil stepmother storyline. The story seems to deal a lot with honoring spirits, hidden powers, Russian rural folklore. It sounds like the perfect story for a cold winter's night. The rest of the books are all physical books that I picked off of my bookshelf. So let's go ahead and discuss them. The first two physical books we have are Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrun and Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Let's talk about Kiss Her Once for Me. This is described as a festive romantic comedy. Love at first sight, lover disappears after a single night, never to be seen again. There's a fake engagement with a friend slash landlord. They go home for the holidays to meet his family, and his sister happens to be the one that got away. What I didn't mention is that we are following a woman as the MC, so that means we are dealing with a sapphic love story. This seems to have a very creative take on the love triangle. Honestly, it sounds like the perfect holiday rom-com. I am excited. Now let's talk about Red, White, and Royal Blue. This was the 2019 Goodreads Choice Awards winner for Best Romance and for Best Debut Novel. I realize I am late to the game with this, though it has actually been on my shelf since December of 2019. That is when I requested this from Book of the Month. It intrigued me back then, and I wanted it on my shelf, and I just never got to it. So it is finally time for me to read this and see what the hype is all about. Plus, I wanted to read this before watching the movie adaptation. From what I've seen, it's gotten a lot of praise. We'll see. I love me a good fake friends to romance storyline, plus a Killian love story. The next two books I have chosen are This Spells Love by Kate Robb and The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. Let's talk about This Spells Love. The tagline for this book states, "A spell for you to forget your ex, but what else might you lose?" This is one of the more recent additions to my bookshelf. I'm sure there are many books on my bookshelf internally screaming right now because this has essentially jumped the TBR line. I honestly couldn't help it. I mean, just listen. There are witchy spells, alternate realities, friends to strangers to lovers. Maybe, I mean, that's a new one I haven't heard, but that's what I'm getting the vibes of from reading the synopsis. And I like the different take of the romantic conflict in this because it seems like it's not going to be an easy choice. This is going to be a fun, cozy read for me. The Unmaking of June Farrow. This is another recent addition to my bookshelf. I know, this is so horrible, but you have to understand, reading the synopsis of these books, I just could not wait to read them. I swear I will get to the older books that are still sitting on my shelf. In this one, we have a woman who is trying to break her family's centuries-old curse, solve her mother's disappearance, and find love. The synopsis is giving me strong practical magic vibes.
Always throw spilled salt over your left shoulder. Keep rosemary by your garden gate. Plant lavender for luck. And fall in love whenever you can.
But like a little darker. I'm really excited to read this. This is a really good pick for my cozy Yule TBR, where a lot of other books may not have fit that theme for me. The next two books are The Lantern's Ember by Colleen Hook and These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. Let's talk about The Lantern's Ember. This was a purchase I made some years ago because it is a YA story that follows a strong-willed, natural-born witch. She has this feeling of being pulled to this other world, and in that other world, there are nightmarish creatures. In order to get there, she has to get through these people who guard the gate to the other world called lanterns, and I believe that is who the love interest is in this book. It's implied by the synopsis that she meets this guy, but I'm not sure if there's like a romantic entanglement with the guy who is labeled as a lantern. There are also vampires in this apparently. I don't think I've read a story that has had a vampire in it in a really long time. I'm interested to see how this goes with this story. Let's talk a little bit about These Violent Delights. This has been on my bookshelf since November of 2020. Again, this is another Book of the Month selection. It seems to be a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1926 in Shanghai. There are rival gangs, doomed star-crossed lovers. You know the drill.
Do you buy your thumb in us, sir? I do buy my thumb, sir! Do you buy your thumb in us? Sir.
I am curious to see how it retells the Romeo and Juliet story. I will admit Romeo and Juliet is not my favorite Shakespearean story, but I know it is the most popular to retell. I am curious to see what the take is. The last two books that I have selected are The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, and I know you were waiting for it, Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. So let's talk about The Ocean at the End of the Lane. This was the 2013 Goodreads Choice Awards winner for Best Fantasy. It of course is written by one of my favorite authors, Neil Gaiman. Though I still have not read everything written by him, I'm pretty sure this book has been on my shelf at least since 2013, because according to this, I pre-ordered the signed first edition. That was a whole marketing campaign for the book when it was published. According to the synopsis, it seems to deal with memories from childhood with a little bit of magical elements involved. It's Neil Gaiman. I fully expect some dark fantasy element involved in this story. The tagline describes this book as delicate as a butterfly's wing and as menacing as a knife in the dark, which tells me that I should be prepared for an emotional story. Not so much scary, definitely emotional.
Emotional, damn it!
That is why I feel like it definitely fits in my cozy Yule TBR. It also is a short read, which I think will be a nice kind of in between a lot of the other books, which are a little bit longer. Finally, let's talk about Bookshops and Bone Dust, the most anticipated read for me. I love Legends and Lattes, which was Travis Baldree's first book in this universe, and I cannot wait to get back into this world with these characters. This is my pre-ordered copy that I got, I think, God, my pre-order copy was like really late. It came, I want to say, a week after the publishing date, which I was a little bummed about, but I'm glad that it's here so I could record the video with the physical copy. This story is basically a cozy day in the life D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, about a female orc who learns that there is more to life than doing the next campaign, the next job, and more to life than just violence. I believe she is a barbarian in the story. This is a prequel to Legends and Lattes, and in this story, the MC is waylaid in a small beach town after an injury. It seems to be the start of her journey for what is to come down the line, ultimately being the story of Legends and Lattes. Travis Baldree manages to get that cozy vibe just right with the right amount of intrigue and like little conflict to keep the story interesting. I cannot wait to start reading this. And then really quickly, I want to showcase the book that was picked for my book club for the month of November, and that is Some Things I Still Can't Tell You by Misha Collins. So this is Lucky Book 13. It is a book of poems written by the one and only Misha Collins of Supernatural and Gishwish fame.
Who are you? I'm the one who gripped you tight and raised you from perdition.
I am a huge Supernatural fan, but the book club member who picked this is a much bigger Supernatural fan than I am, and I love her for it. I do think Misha Collins is a uniquely kind human being. I love that he crafted this small book of poems. I feel like I have learned more about the actor in just reading these 80 pages than I have by osmosis and watching the show. I enjoy the show, but I don't follow the actors as much as, say, other fans do. It was definitely revealing a little bit to read these poems and kind of get insight into this actor. I do think Misha Collins has a huge heart and welcoming spirit, two things that definitely impacted the poems in this book. It was another quick read. I really appreciated that. So I am excited to jump into reading all of these books, and I feel like they each provide a different level of cozy for my Yule loving heart. I am determined to read each one and finish them, hopefully by the end of the year, but my guesstimation is that these will take me well into the month of January. I am totally fine with this. I have accounted for this, actually. I think realistically going forward, my TBR selections are going to be more of a seasonal thing versus a monthly thing. That will lessen the stress for me as far as getting through the books that I want to read, and it will help me enjoy them a lot more, so there's not this like deadline hanging over me where I'm going to have to do a TBR list each month. I think that's how I am going to do it from here on out. Let me know what you think of my cozy Yule TBR selection. Have you read any of these books? Do you want to read any of these books? I would love to get a discussion going. Please feel free to start that in the comments below. Or you can reach out to me on my Twitter or Instagram. I have both. Until our next chapter together, merry part and blessed be.